What I would like to go over now is Shapes tools and the Pathfinder tool. Shapes, I've already done this. Our tools are over here. We have our rectangle. Made one of those already. We can make a rectangle of any dimension like this. If we hold Shift, that gives us a perfect square that just locks the dimensions together. If I hold Option, let me stop that real quick. Command Z. Start in the middle. This gives me one direction. Shift locks it together. If I hold Option, it starts from my starting point and then builds me a square or a rectangle. If I hold Shift, it builds me a square from that center point. Now you might say, why would I ever want to do that, right? If I want to make a square, Command Z, if I want to make a square, I would want to, go from wherever I want to go from and where I wanted to go to. But if I wanted to make a perfectly centered square, I could grab some guides and I could put guides out. We're going to go to 5.5 since our page is 11 inches long. And now I could do my rectangle and I could start it here. And now I have a perfect square by holding Shift and Alt. I have a perfect square coming out from the exact center of my page. So that's just one of the uses of that. I can hit Command Z to undo that. I can also get the Direct Select tool, select the object, hit Delete. Now there's another way to make a rectangle, or actually any of these shapes, is instead of clicking and dragging, I can just click once. Now I have options, and there may be fewer options depending, or there's not fewer options, sorry. There might be more options depending on which version you're going to use. Let's say I want to make one that is exactly 2 inches by 2 inches. Hit Enter. Now this is a 2 by 2 rectangle. Let's say I want a business card size rectangle. That's going to be 2 inches. Well, not wide. We want 3.5 inches for a business card and 2 inches high. Okay. So this rectangle is the size of a business card. You can set that to whatever measurements you want. I'm going to delete mine. Now if we click and hold instead of click, we get other options. Rounded rectangle tool. Pretty simple. Gives you a rounded rectangle. On the newer versions of Illustrator, this has a live option for adding in those, for adding in how round your edges are going to be. There's a little ball right there for doing that. Let me delete this one. You can also click once. Get the same tool we had last time. Let's say we want that same dimensions of our business card. And let's say I want my corner radius. Now remember, the radius is half the height of a circle, or half the width of a circle. I want this, let's say I want quite a big one. If my height's going to be 2, let's say I want 0.5 inches. It's going to be pretty heavy rounds. Yeah, so that gives me a very specific size and shape. I can get my black arrow tool, delete. Could also just Command Z if I preferred that. The ellipse tool, same as the other ones. I can make my ellipse however I like. I can hold Shift, becomes a locked circle. So you can see the width and height go up exactly together. If I hold Option, it starts where I clicked and it goes out to wherever I want it to go out to. If I click once, same thing, width and height of the ellipse. Of course, it's a circle if those two numbers match. I can click this one. Now, to get both of these, I can either select both, just drag a box that's touching, that selects both, or I can select one, hold Shift, select the other one, and now I have both selected. If I hold Shift and click it again, it cycles the selection. Selected, not selected. Selected, not selected. Select both, delete. Polygon tool. Now, polygon tool starts automatically from its center point. We do not need to hold Option to start it from the center point. It will automatically start from the center point. Now, this said it was the polygon tool, not the hexagon tool. So what I can do is if I want it to be more sides or fewer sides, I hit the up arrow for more sides, and I hit the down arrow for fewer sides, right? And it can't go below 3. But I can go up and down to my heart's content, make whatever shape I want. Now, if I hold Shift, what it's going to do, see, no matter where I put my mouse, it's going to lock one face to horizontal. So that bottom face is horizontal. So if I hold Shift, it's going to lock that face to horizontal, no matter how many sides. See, the bottom face remains horizontal. If I let go of Shift, it gives me the freedom. Now, another one, star tool. Before we do that, I'm going to select this, delete it. I accidentally made a tiny star. Select that, tap delete as well. Now, star tool is much like the polygon tool. You click and drag, and it gives you the a center out version. If I hold Shift, it locks 2 of the points to the bottom. Now, if I hit the up or down arrow, I just get a star with more points. Just adds 1 point each time, just like it added 1 side to my polygon. I get a triangle out of both, strangely enough. Now, one thing to note, this star does not look quite like the stars we draw. It's a little bit fat. So if I hold Option, it gives me parallel line star. So if I hold Option and Shift, it locks it vertically and also gives me parallel line star. And what I mean by a parallel line star is that from this point, this line is parallel with this line. If you make a star in this without holding Shift, without holding Option, see how this line would come up here and head out this direction. This line would head down here and come down this direction. They are not parallel. So you can get a fat star by not touching anything, and you can get a skinny or parallel star by holding Option. I'm going to get rid of both of these. Now, star tool. I'm going to keep the same tool. Click once. Now I have an interesting thing. I have more options this time. It's radius 1, radius 2, and the number of points. Radius 1 is the outside radius of the star. That's how far your outer points are going to be. Radius 2 is a little different in that radius 2 is where the inside points are going to be. So when the points come back in, how far are they going to come back in? So let's say I set a radius of 2 inches. If I want a star that has almost no in and out to it, right? I want almost a circle. I can make this a very close number to 2. Now watch this. So you can actually see that the radius 2 is actually very close to this. I can make it a little bit more extreme. See our second radius, this distance from center to this point is a little bit closer than from center to this point. Center to this point is still farther. These are only 0.2 inches away. This is 0.5 if I remember correctly. Can keep going. That looks kind of like our fat star. And I can keep going. Let's make a very aggressive one. It has an interior radius of 0.25, so that allows me to do a very aggressive, very pointy star. And those are all 5 sides. This works with any number of sides. I can either just hit up or down here on this little arrow, or I can type in the number. Let's say I want a lot. 20. That's a relatively unattractive object that I've just made. But if you wanted to make one of those stick on top clearance stickers or something like that, we would probably actually do it like that. Click once, let's get a 20, but let's get a very minimally different star with very small indentions. So let's try that 1.8 again. Wow, that's pretty nice. That looks like one of those little award stars that we would put on something. Or again, maybe a little clearance tag, maybe a little bit sharper. 0.6. There we go, that's pretty nice. That's got just about the right level of in-out sharpness that we would want for that kind of stickers. You put this in the, the corner of our book with our, whatever award we've won, and we're good to go. So, those are the shapes. There's one more, which is this thing, the flare tool. The flare tool is horrible and ugly. You should use it as much as you want during this practice, because you will not turn in a project with this. I find it just hideously ugly. I'm not 100% sure what they were thinking by including it. Just don't use it. Play with it to your heart's content right now, and then never, ever, ever use it again. Alright, so that is shapes. Now, we're done with shapes. Let's use Pathfinder. Pathfinder is a way that we can modify shapes. Let me get a different shape. Let me get an ellipse. Now I'm going to hold shift, make one circle. Now I'm going to make a slightly bigger circle. Now, to use Pathfinder, Pathfinder is a way that we can use one object as a cookie cutter for another object. But we need to be able to control where these objects are. One, to move them, I can click one and move it, right? I can click the other one and move it. I can shift click, grab both, move them together. I can also come out to this edge and rotate them together, should I want to. So, we have another issue. See how this circle is on top of the one behind it? It actually looks like two pieces of paper sitting on top of one another. Well, that's going to inform which object is going to cut out of the other one. If I use the Pathfinder and tell it to subtract front, which is one of the options, it's going to subtract this one out of this one. Well, what if I want it the other way, right? What if I want to cut this little circle out of this big one? Well, the way we're going to do that, the way we're going to modify, which piece of paper is on top, is by right-clicking on it, going to Arrange, and then we have a bunch of options. There's Bring Forward and Send Backwards. This essentially moves our piece of paper, one piece of paper in either direction. So if you have 100 objects, it's going to move it one out of those 100 layers, or levels. I shouldn't use the word layers. We're going to get to that later. Bring to front or send to back does the entire stack. It puts this piece of paper either completely on the bottom of the stack or completely on top of the stack. So if I say on that circle, right, the circle is behind, we want it on top. So the option, the option out of these is bring to front. Now it's on top. Now I can use this object to punch out a hole of the one behind it. Now, let's get the Pathfinder tool and actually do that. Close that, get it out of the way. We go up to Window, Pathfinder. Brings up this window. I like putting mine just about right there. Now, we have a few options. We're really going to use the shape modes. For the purposes of this class, we're going to use the shape modes. First one is Unite. Unite, we can actually look at the little picture and see what it might do. It's going to put our two squares together. What did I do wrong? Clicked it. Filter produced no results. Please select two overlapping paths. Okay. Well, you can see I have my selection tool. Oh, there we go. These are not selected. So I need to drag a box and select them, or click one, hold shift, click the other one. Now let's try it. There we go. I have this little peanut-esque shape. I'm going to undo that. I can move this one. It will put my little peanut shape together. Now realize that there are no more lines in here. There's no more art in here. This is now one complete shape. There's no hidden line just hiding in there. This art comes here, ends at this point, kicks off again, and goes that direction. There's nothing in here. I'm going to undo that. And actually, let me do this. Let me make a few of these. Oh, shift. Make this a little bit smaller just by scaling the selection. Now I'm going to make more of these. Again, this is just option dragging. Get them a little closer together so I can fit a fourth one on here. Let's see. Oh, still not going to be big enough. Now I can zoom out. Select them all. Hold shift to keep them this right size, or I'm sorry, the right shape. Let go. Now I'm off and I need to get back home. I could hit Command 0, and that just brings me home on my page. So, this first one, click one, select the other one by holding shift, click this first one. That unites my objects together. Drag a box, select the second set. I'm going to subtract the top one out of the back one. It's called minus front. Good. Nice and simple, right? We have a Pac-Man or a very, big smile, something like that. We're there, though. Now, this next one's a little bit different. This is intersect. This is essentially where the Venn diagram overlaps. So we're going to get this section right here. Like that. And sure enough, we do. This last one is exactly the opposite. This is the parts of the Venn diagram that don't touch. We get this object. Now, these are 4 modes to get this is the basic way to cut some shapes out of other shapes with Illustrator. It's very simple, but it gets the job done. Alright, so our practice project for this is going to be to make a smiley face. This is the smiley face we're going to go for. This smiley face has no objects here, no objects here. See, I can't grab anything. Of course, if I click on the face, I can. But I can click in the face, and this is nothing back here. This is one Pathfinder shape. So what we're going to do is, how are we going to make this one Pathfinder shape? This is a few steps, but we can get it done. So we can see that there is actually some transparency. If I put a circle here, and if I right-click on that circle, arrange, send to back, that will show me, see, this is a transparent object on another one. Delete that. I'm going to delete this smiley face, and we're going to do a new one. Now, first thing, the most important thing, of course, is to change our colors so it looks like a smiley face. I'm going to make mine a little bit mustardy. And, of course, black outlines for a yellow smiley face. Now, you might want to start with the outside of the face, but we're going to start with the inside. We're going to start with the details. I'm going to start with the eyes. Those are going to be simple, right? I grab an ellipse. Let's say I want some crazy tall eyes. I might be tempted to make these eyes white, right? When we think of eyes in cartoons and things like that, we think of them as white. We're not going to do that, because remember, we're eventually going to cut these out of some other object. So these are our eyes. Now, the smile might be confusing. If you remember right, the smile that I made was nice and sharp. It was a crescent. It does exactly what needed to be done with the simplest geometry possible. One thing you could do if you wanted a really ugly smiley face, and this is oftentimes something that students do, is they will get a circle, realize that the direct selection tool will let them modify the circle. They will select this top anchor and do that. But that gives you these weird little arcs. It's not nice and sharp like we want it to be. Now, of course, if this is your cartoon, if this is your thing that you want to do, you can have these little curved things if you want. I don't for the purposes of this project, so we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is use the Pathfinder to make that smile. I'm going to make my smile over here just to keep from touching my eyes. Okay. Now, instead of making another circle, I'm just going to option drag this one. And then, now you can see, that looks a whole lot like a smile. Right? This section of this underneath piece looks a whole lot like a smile. I don't want it quite that sharp in the corners, so what I'm going to do is stretch this, recenter it. I like the shape of that a lot more. Now I can select both of these objects and hit subtract. It's a pretty nice smile. Now, what if I did this wrong? What if I did this way? Well, now, if I do that, I get that shape. Well, I could turn that upside down and, you know, make it into a smile, but it's ugly. I don't like that. So, how do we fix this? We right-click. Oh, it would help if we did that. We would right-click, arrange, and send it to back. If you notice, there's also these icons. The up arrow is shift. This symbol is command on your keyboard. If you're on a Mac, it would be control if you're on a PC. And then this is left bracket, which is right by the P key. So if I don't want to go into this menu every time, I can select this, command, shift, left bracket, and shove it to the back. Now it's in the right place. I can select both of these. I can subtract the front. And I have this very nice smiley face. Since my eye is a little goofy, I think I want to rotate my smile to match. Maybe bring down my eye to fit. Looks good to me. Now, we need the edge. So we're going to do this. Started my circle. Why would I start my circle there? Well, you know, if I just go this way, I could make the circle and then drag it back. But I can't really see how big my circle is compared to all my facial features. So what I'm going to do, hold Option. Option allows me to fit this oval however I like. If I want it to be a circle, I can do that. And I can say that that's not quite enough space above the eye, but it's a little bit too much space underneath the chin. So I'm going to let go. Uh-oh, all my art's gone. Well, again, one of two things, Command Shift left bracket, or right-click, arrange, send to back. You can tell I use the keyboard command more than I use the menu icon. Now, I can arrange this. I'm going to move that up. I like that slightly bigger forehead, bigger cheeks look with a slightly less chin there. That looks pretty good to me. These objects are on top. And now I could do this just by selecting the back and one of these objects, delete, select the next one, delete, select the next one. I'm sorry, not delete, minus front. Or I can actually select all of them, hit minus front, and it will select all of the top objects out of the back object. So now I have one object, right? One object, there's nothing in the eyes. If I make another shape behind this, it shows up through, right? So I'm not making a white object there. I'm making one object. Now, the advantage of doing this kind of art over just putting white objects, and there's sometimes no reason not to just keep layering objects, and we will do that for the purposes of this class. But the nice thing about these objects is that they move together. You don't have to worry about grouping them. They are art as one piece. They are not big collections of little objects, which can get frustrating to try to fix sometimes. These work just as single objects. One thing to note, your white arrow tool still works, but it only works on one path. So if I select this anchor, see this? It only selects this outside path. I'm not going to be modifying anything inside. So if I grab this anchor and move it, we don't modify these things. Command Z. Now, these little guys have come up. These little antennae. These are called handlebars. Handlebars give me the option to do this. I can pull on and rotate my handlebars to change a curve. This gives me a lot of control over an object. It also gives you the opportunity to do something bad, and that bad thing is having self-intersecting art. So this art self-intersects. Now, while the computer can tell that this is inside and this is outside, right? It's not coloring it in. The side that is inside and outside might not be so obvious to a piece of equipment that is doing machine cutting. So if you were making stickers for somebody, or if you were making, say, something that was going to be cut out of wood, self-intersecting art would not be something that machine could accomplish. So what we want to do is just make sure that none of our art is self-intersecting. We want to avoid that at all costs because it can cause quite a few problems. Once we have these things, I can take this here. What if he needs a very fancy hat? Let's say he needs a little top hat. Alright, well, what if he needs a black top hat? Well, I already have black here, but it's not in the right spot. Well, I can do that. I can make sure my rectangle's selected, and I can just tap this right here. Now I have a black top hat, but it's got a yellow border. That looks stupid. So let's take this yellow, get rid of that. This little icon here will return either the stroke or fill, just depending on which one's selected, to transparent. Clicking this will return it to whatever the last color it was is. So now I'm going to find a place for my top hat. Now, my top hat probably wants a little bit of a brim. Let's see. I was doing a simple 2D thing. There would be my top hat with a brim. But that doesn't really look great. So if we think about a top hat at kind of an angle, it's going to kind of have a brim that looks more like that, right? Well, now I have a problem in that this shape up here needs a little bit of this as well. So I'm going to do that, grab it, and I'm just going to move it to right there. Now this doesn't have a whole lot of detail to it, but it is a functional top hat. If I want it to be shorter, I just grab just the rectangle, and I'm going to scale the rectangle towards that top part. And now I'm hiding this ugly square edge inside this other black object. So now I can take this, and let's say I want to be kicked off at an angle kind of like that. Right? My little smiley face now has a very fancy single color hat. I could, using the exact same methods, go through and add a little stripe if I wanted to. I could actually take this object and make that stripe. I'm going to hit Option so I can make a copy. I'm going to drag another one out. And now I can, of course I don't have any stroke, so I can't really see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is turn a stroke on, doesn't matter what color. Now I can see if this one's on top. Yes, it is. I want the other one on top. I'm going to do Command-Shift forward, which is Command-Shift right bracket. Select both of these. All right. Subtract. Now I have a little bit of a stripe going on. Well, I don't really like that blue. Let's make the fill white. Or actually, let's go with a silvery color, gray. Whoop. I did not have this selected, so none of that took. I can drag this and put my stripe in. Now we can see that it's not really touching correctly over here. So I would either need to recut this object with slightly different edges. I could scale it just a little bit to get it to fit. Oh, and I can zoom in. I can scale this to fit it. But if I don't want to scale it, right, the rest of this looks good, it's just not meeting right there, well, I can get my white arrow tool. I can select just that anchor point, and I can move it until it fits. I can go do the same thing on the other side and get a very nice, and then I can do Command minus to get me back, or I can do Command 0, which just returns me back to my full page. Now, I have a very nice stripe with no outline, right? There's no outline on this hat. We could change that. Let's say we want to give him a purple hat with a black outline, so we kind of match the art style of our smiley face. Well, let's do that. I'm going to select all the black objects, which are these three. I'm going to turn them purple. Again, I want a color that does not show this thing. So I can select a bright one, hit the one underneath it, and that gives me the closest color that will actually print OK. Can hit OK. Alright, well now we want the black outline from here. So what we're going to do is actually click on this one. See that it's a 5-point black outline. Go back and select all my purples. Black outline. But this is only 1 point. So I'm just going to bump that so my art style matches, because I want, you know, consistent art all throughout my stuff. Okay, well I have a problem. Now this line is in the wrong place. This line's all messed up. Right? This actually looks okay. Right? When we think about the top of the hat, we think about it as this ring. But this ring, we don't expect to see a line behind the column part of the hat. So let's just try taking the vertical portion and this ring, adding them together. Alright, well that looks pretty good, right? My black line on the edge of my object is where I expect it to be. The black line up here is where I expect it to be. That could have caused a problem though. It could have looked like that. Well, if I added it together and it looked like that, well that's an easy fix. I just grab the object I don't like, or that's in the wrong order I should say, arrange, and send to back. Oh dear. Well, that's caused me another issue. That's okay. We can just keep doing this until we get the right order. Think about shuffling a bunch of pieces of paper. No matter how, even if there's a lot of different ways to shuffle them, we can get them in the right order. So I've shuffled them back into the right order, but now I have this gray to purple with no border on it. And that looks weird. So I'm going to go ahead and just add the same border to that. Bump it up to 5. Now my art style, whether it's attractive or not, is at least consistent. Throughout this little horrible smiley face guy. So, there's our smiley face. What I would like you to do for homework is you are going to make me 5 of these. You are going to make me 5 emojis. Of course, you're not just going to copy them, you're going to make 5 unique ones. You are going to make me 5 emojis. What I would like you to do is make your own art style version of 3 existing emojis. Pick 3 that you use a lot or 3 that you just think are cool. Make up an art style that you can do with these tools we've shown. Once you've done that, make those 3, then make 2 new ones. Make 2 that do not exist. Just make them up. Whatever emojis that you wish you had that you don't have, go ahead and make those. That gives you these 5 emojis, which you're just going to put on a page just like this. Of course, I've done something bad, right? I've put my art outside my lines. I don't want that. If I needed to print this, it would cut off the edge of my hat, and I'd be sad. So I'm going to make sure that all my art is inside those edge lines. So you're going to make me 5 emojis, 3 that exist, 2 that are novel, all in the same art style. So what do you want? How do you want to do that? Sometimes it can be helpful to draw these things ahead of time. And then once you're in Illustrator, you have something to look at and try to match. Whereas opposed to just coming out of your mind, like I did this little smiley face guy, you don't really have a good goal in mind.